Hey there. I just got off recording this episode that you are about to hear with Colin Boyd. And I wanted to step in and give you a couple of tidbits of things to listen for as you go through this episode because it was good. We are talking about why your course, your program, your digital product isn't selling. We're also going to talk about investments that we have made. We're going a little bit behind the scenes in our business over the years, where we started in terms of investing and where we move to in terms of investing in guidance, consulting, coaching in our business. Colin is also going to break down how you can make your next live virtual on the stage experience, whether that's a webinar, a challenge, a live launch where you are engaging and showing up on lives with people, how you can make them more effective and you can get sales instead of just claps. Listen in. This is going to be good. And boy, that story about his daughter whispering in his ear might pull at your heartstrings. Let's do this. Get ready because everything is about to change. There's a new way of living life and doing business that will blow your mind. This is a podcast all about the timing of life and the timing of success. It's what we call the Right on Time life. And you are listening to the Right on Time podcast with Amber McHugh. Colin Boyd, welcome to the podcast.
Amber McHugh, I just love hanging out with you.
Same. It is so good to see you again. For those of you listening, Colin has upgraded his camera. This was my breaking news as soon as we got on Zoom. So we're going to spill the beans. Hopefully he'll spill the beans on what he's got going on because Colin, you are a pro at all things selling through speaking. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, well, I think, my obsession is this idea that to really move someone into your program, obviously you've got to learn how to sell. So many people create these amazing courses and they're like a hospital in the desert. And so they can help people, but there's no one around. And so this skill of learning how to sell is super important. But what I've discovered is that when you sell from a stage, it gives you leverage. And there's all these inbuilt qualities which we can talk about in a stage, and that be virtual stages or even live stages when they open up again. And so that that got me obsessed with this idea.
This idea of selling from virtual stages.
Correct.
Yeah. So everybody, you may know Colin. If you've been hanging out in our world for a little while, this isn't the first time Colin has been on the podcast because it is so much fun hanging out with him. It's so much fun learning from him. And you operate with such integrity over and over and over again. Everything you do, I listen to your podcast and just everything, knowing you personally, what you talk about public, it's all so in sync. So you mentioned this passion around sell from stage. How did this start?
Yeah, so for me, it all started let me share my digital journey with it, because I was a coach and I was doing a lot of kind of like career coaching, executive coaching. I coached on productivity. I coached on presentation skills. Like I was doing everything, right? And I was flying around the country doing all that sort of stuff. And then I learned this idea of building an online course. So I got super excited. I went out, I hired a videographer, and I decided I'm going to, do it on this particular topic. At the time, it was on productivity. And so I hired the videographer, hired the studio. I spent literally 6 months designing this program. We shot the course over about 5 days. We edited it, got it all ready. So it's this beast, right? It's this behemoth, this, this blockbuster course. And I went to market with it. We had 600 people see the training about it, right? And I had one person buy. And that one person bought the lowest payment plan as well. So he was paying under $100 a month for it. And I knew that this course was amazing. I just knew the content was great.
Yeah.
But I realized that you can have the greatest course, but if you don't know how to sell it, it actually is not going to make you any money or make any difference. And that was when I got obsessed around what's the difference between just speaking on a virtual stage, like a video or a live stream, and speaking to provide information or speaking to move people into your programs if they're the right fit. And that got me obsessed with it. And to be quite frank, that one course, it was on productivity, which I don't sell publicly anymore, but we've had over 3,000 people join it since that one person. So we've done millions of dollars in it, literally, over the last couple of years. What I realized was my course wasn't the problem. It was how I was talking about my course, and the fact that no one cares about my course. All they care about is their problems.
No one cares about your course. No one cares. Fill in the blank, right? Nobody cares about this thing that you've created. We want results. You said that one person out of 650. So let's just putting that in context a little bit. I was doing the math there on the calculator. That is less than 1% conversion. It is 0.1% conversion.
It was bad. It was bad.
Oftentimes we hear, I want everyone who is listening to this episode right now, you've got to know your numbers. As an entrepreneur, as a modern CEO, you've got to know your numbers. So pulling that through, oftentimes one of the numbers that we'll hear that is good for conversion when you're launching your program, whatever the launch vehicle sales channel is, you may see 1 to 3% conversion. But you see something differently when people use the methodology that we're speaking about today. What do you see in terms of conversion?
Yeah, I mean, this is so cool. So, I mean, typically on a webinar, most people, if they're doing the webinar and they're doing an okay job at it, they might get like a 2% conversion on a webinar. In fact, there was one of our mutual friends. Oh, I think you know him, John. Do you know John Akapora? Yeah. So John, he's one of our students, a good friend of ours, good friend of mine. He was running a webinar and he was getting about 3% conversion, and it was okay. And he started using this methodology, which we can talk about today. And overnight, his webinar went to 14%. Isn't that just crazy?
Yeah. So what was it at before? It was
at 3%.
3, and it went 3%. To 14.
Went to 14%. The same. Do you know Julie Solomon?
Yeah.
Influencer podcast. So she uses our methodology, and her webinar went from, I think it was like 3% to 9% straight away. And so like a 10% converting webinar, especially when you're getting some bigger numbers, like that's a multi-six-figure webinar. I mean, John did $80,000 in the first time he used this process. Yeah. So I think, and it can even get crazier than that. Like someone just posted in our group the other day, she did a 33% conversion rate on her webinar, and she had a couple of hundred people on there. So she did super well. It's crazy.
That's phenomenal. And thinking about that in context, let's say we're just starting out, and I like to go to easy numbers as well, but you look at 100 people, you've got 100 people coming to that webinar, 1% conversion, we've got one person, 2, 3, but if we can get that up to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, your numbers multiply, your ROI multiplies, and you are seeing results in your business. So you can keep doing this, and you're going to start getting people the results they're looking for.
Exactly. And it's like exponential, because a lot of the times people try to focus on, I just need more and more people. But obviously you need a certain amount of people to start making some good money. But we've had people, there's one lady, her first webinar she ran, and she was selling her coaching. She said she had about 15 people on the webinar. She did 50 grand. She converted it was like 70% of the people on there bought like a high level coaching program from her. It was like $5,000 or $6,000. 50 grand on her first webinar. I was like, what on earth? This is crazy.
That's phenomenal. I love hearing the case studies. I love hearing the numbers, because this is truly what is possible. But as you said, we don't want to be the hospital in the desert. And there are so many people, and I have some offers that I haven't fully dialed in yet. So there are many instances where it's not selling. Why isn't this selling? When you see that, what is that typically that is behind the product, the offer not selling?
One of the big mistakes that people do is that when they teach on a webinar or maybe a video series or a challenge, they teach how-to content. And in fact, they usually go to their course and go, what's the content in my course that's really awesome that I can teach on this webinar, so that when people hear it, they will go, oh, wow, this is so good. Imagine if I could do the course. But that doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work is because your audience who are on that journey, and that's, doing free content is part of the journey of the transformation. But your audience is on that journey. And what they actually need is a greater level of commitment to the area that you're helping them with. That's what they actually need. I know for me, an example of that was when we were moving to the US. So we live in California. You can hear I'm Australian. But we talked about moving to the US for a good 5 years. And in fact, I think we were in the same mastermind together when I announced, and I think it was in New York, and I said, we're going to be living in the US in the next mastermind round that comes around. Like it was like 4 months from there. And so for 5 years, my kids say kerfuffled around. We kerfuffled around. Like we researched, we went on Reddit, we went on YouTube. I picked people's brains about it. But it wasn't until I decided, and what I did, I hired an international immigration consultant. I hired some lawyers. I hired like the right people who had the right process. And literally within under 6 months, we were living in the US. And the big thing that I realized was that I could do all the research, that I want, but it isn't until I make a decision that I actually see transformation in my life. And that's why your audience members aren't seeing change in their life.
I can completely echo that, because I know that there are instances in so many areas, again, even in my life, I'm not calling anyone out, but if this is you also, know that you are not alone. I've made commitment to something and then I'm like, oh, 1 year goes by. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm like, am I really committed? Like, am I really all in on this? And by all in, I don't mean I'm giving up everything else, but do I have that level of desire to go and get that thing? And I think that you're right. Like, we have to personally be committed. So as we think about webinars and we think about teaching how-to content, I'm sure everyone listening has been on a webinar or a webinar-like experience, right? Because we're talking about challenges. We're talking about, this applies to any of our marketing materials where we're showing up and speaking, right?
Yes, exactly. Any sort of stage. Yeah, like a virtual stage.
Yes. Yeah. So we've all been a part of these things. And I hear a few different things. I hear they don't work. I hear I don't buy from them. I hear I got all the information I needed, I'm out. Or I'm hearing that people don't show up for webinars anymore. So I just kind of threw the kitchen sink at you. How do we design an experience, design our conversation to address these things? To get people up, to get people to connect without like, here's the how-to.
Yeah. Well, let me clarify as well with this how-to conversation, because it's not about doing a webinar that has no value, because we've all experienced that as well, where you get on there and it's just a complete sales pitch and the person's really pushy and it feels awkward. And then maybe you end up buying and then you regret the decision. Right? That's not what I'm talking about, because there's kind of two ends of the scale. There's super lots of information how to, and then on the other end of the scale is really salesy, no helpful information at all. And so what you need to do is what I call infusion selling. And infusion selling is where you create concepts and ideas that are incredibly valuable to the audience. So whether they join your program or not, they'll actually walk away and have a good experience of the webinar or the training series. But when you teach in a way where your concepts are really valuable and how you teach is actually through infusing the selling throughout, in other words, it creates desire for the outcome and reduces resistance in the audience member as you're actually teaching. So the two big goals of a great webinar that converts is that it creates desire for the audience to commit to the next level in the area that you're talking them with. So it creates desire. And the second thing is it reduces the resistances and the misbeliefs and the challenges that they have that are stopping them and have stopped them for years from taking action. Yeah. And if you can reduce that and create more desire, you create a decision point. And in that decision point, that's when people change their lives, because they don't need more random bits of information. They need a decision.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. We need decisions, even if that decision is, oh, this isn't the right thing for me right now. Or, oh yeah, this is, like building that desire to commitment for the right people. That's fascinating because you talk about also sales being us being in service.
Yeah, this is huge. I think because I definitely believe that most people, if you're in business as an entrepreneur, you didn't get in there just to make money. You got in there because it had meaning. You wanted to make a difference. You wanted to contribute. But the problem is that you can't really contribute in your business until you know how to sell effectively. And what this means is that you could have the biggest audience, right? And none of them are clients. But until they become a client, I mean, think about this. I know for you, for me, and for your listeners, think about your business right now. Where do you see the biggest transformations? Is it from people who are prospects and download free PDFs, or is it from people who do your programs, exchange money, exchange commitment? It's always it's not a trick question. It's the people who do your programs. And the reason why that happens is because there's a greater level of commitment, and then that aligns with the process that you take them through, and that commitment that they bring, which is fueled by money, like the money exchange. It's fueled by time. It's fueled by a desire, and they bring that into it, and then they move through the process. Because the problem is if you gave your whole process away for free, most people would do, pretty much everyone would do nothing with it. Right. And so when you add the fuel of money, like a money exchange, commitment, time, that's the fuel that drives them through the process. Without it, it's just going to be another course that's on the shelf.
It's funny, as you're talking, I'm thinking about my family members who say they really want to start a bit. I have ideas. I'm like, I want to do this. I'm like, no, you don't. Because I have got all of the resources for you. I will sit down with you anytime. Come on over this Saturday. We've mapped business plans upon business plans out. Like, this is my zone. And the commitment isn't.
They do nothing. Yeah, totally. But if you said, I know you won't, but it's like, because it's weird with family. If you said, okay, it's $20,000
right
to start this, that you give to me, $20,000, I bet that they would actually start their business.
That's a good point.
If they put money on the table, $10,000 even, whatever it is, right? It's just an amount, but the amount represents more commitment. And that's why, you and I, we've been in mastermind programs and group programs where, it was $30,000 and above. And when I think about it, I think, first of all, you should do those programs when you're at the level that you can handle that commitment. Yes. And I think, to be honest, I think this industry sometimes isn't great at knowing what level someone should be at to go in. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But I think when you are at that conversation, with which you and I were at that level, it fuels a greater level of transformation. I honestly wouldn't be living in the US if it wasn't for me putting $30,000 down to do a certain program. I wouldn't be living here.
I love this. This gets back to your integrity. I love where you went with that conversation, because I think that you're right. We've got to right size our risk. And I'm totally going to go back to my family and ask how committed they are.
Give me $20.
I'm doing it. I'll let you all know how it goes. But because I know they're making investments. So I'm gonna check in on that and see where I can help. And then, I was one of those people who, at the beginning of my journey, I was committed, but again, not going all in with all of my savings. And there was a point when I'm like, $20,000, will I ever invest that much? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But at the right time, the right level. So I love that you shared that, because it offers a little bit of perspective.
Yeah. And I think, and obviously you have to do what's right for you. But, as I say that, I'm thinking about the first program I ever did was, it was a life coaching course, and it was about 12 years ago. And honestly, I think I was earning about $30,000 in my career, and it was 15 grand. And I committed to a $15,000 life coaching course. It was over a year and a half. But the thing is like that level of commitment, like I paid it off as I went. Like I did not miss a payment. There was a level of commitment that I brought to it. And for me, that was actually what kicked off my whole business. And I put it all on credit card, right? So I'm not giving financial advice, by the way, but it's like, for me, it was I just knew that it was the right program to do. I'd done my due diligence. I knew that it was getting results. And out of everyone I looked at, I was like, that's the path that I want to go. And I bet on myself. And that is entrepreneurship.
You bet on yourself. You looked at the people who were pursuing that path and you said, that's the path I want to go down. I love this so much. And I did the same thing. I got two $2,000 courses when I was starting my journey to explore digital marketing, operating online. I knew I had skills and expertise, but how am I going to shape these, package these? And I maybe should have spent a little bit more time on how am I going to sell these to accelerate my results. So you've got to look at what is this full rounded package. I'm really good at running a business. I'm a marketing expert, but all right, how do I fit all of these things together when I'm running and operating and then selling, right? Because we have to sell if we're going to run a business, which is exactly what you help us do. So I want to go back to one of the things that you mentioned about, yes, you're going to share ideas and concepts in the workshop, and we're going to pull through what you talk about as infusion selling, which is so effective. Can you share a little bit more about how that works? And you guys, grab your notebook if you are not driving right now, because I have heard Colin talk about this many times. I am in your program and I'm still learning. So I've got my pen as well, Colin.
Oh, so good. So infusion selling, well, there are 9 infusion selling strategies that we teach. So let me, not to overwhelm the audience, let me go through one of them, right? And so one of them is essentially called basically micro decisions. So micro decisions are little moments in your presentation where you're improving and increasing the level of commitment to themselves in the particular area. If we go back to this core idea of what they don't need is a whole bunch of random information. What they do need is helpful ideas that shift their thinking, but it also increases commitment. And now, so a micro decision is essentially where you design questions so that it amplifies the importance and the impact of that idea on their life. And so let's say, like even just using the idea, let's say signature stories, right? Signature stories, which by the way is an infusion selling strategy as well. But signature stories, and I'm talking about having your signature story, how it makes a big difference. And then I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how clear and effective is your signature story right now? Like if it's a 10, it's, what it is, it's making an impact, people are resonating, and they're actually coming to you going, how do I do what you did after you share your signature story, right? And or one is you haven't even thought about it, or you randomly share a random story when you introduce yourself. So that's the scale. The second thing is, if you were to design a signature story that truly connected with your audience and moved them towards your programs, how would that feel? And what would that make possible for your webinars, your Facebook Lives? What would that make possible for you in your business? And then finally, can you commit to that journey of working on your signature story and making that true and real for you in your life so you can serve your audience more? Can you commit to that? All right. And I would ask the audience. So that's an example of me moving through micro decisions.
That was fascinating because I was so engaged in that. I didn't even realize the magic you were working. Like, I think I can commit. Can I really commit?
You're going through the process. You're like, I think I can, Colin.
I'm working on it. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So guys, Colin wasn't asking you to commit, although maybe you should. He was giving us an example of the micro decision.
Yeah.
So you see how effective that is. It gets me engaged. And that is one of my biggest frustrations with our online platforms is we're not using them as effectively as we could be in engaging our audience in the process. And that can look like all sorts of different things. Comment over here, raise your hand, grab a pen, write this down, right? Like so many different ways that we could do that. And you just did that all through words.
And I love it because there's kind of 2 ends of the scale with this. Sometimes I've seen people do it where their style is hyper controlling. And so, you see, sometimes you go to these like big events and the style of communication is just too controlling. Like it's got like an icky feel to it. And then you can go the other extreme where the person doesn't engage the audience at all. And so what I love about infusion selling is it's a really nice ethical blend of you're connecting with your audience and you're genuinely drawing out a stronger desire for this particular area. And that's what they came to commit to.
Genuinely drawing out the desire for topic of conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're helping them with it. Like you're helping them shift their thinking. You're showing some big strategies and how it all works and helping them to get clear on that process. So that's an example of infusion selling. Yeah. So super practical as well.
Versus, if anyone's doing this is a lesson in what not to do. Versus, not that I've done this, maybe, but versus when you go through a whole workshop, you go through how-to content, you bring credibility, right? We're very good at that in our workshops. This is who I am. This is why you need to listen to me. This is my story, not infusion selling and pulling people through how it relates to their story. But then you get to the end of the workshop and you're like, and I have an offer.
It's that awkward moment.
It's so awkward. This is what felt. It's the stick point for so many. And it was the stick point for me for a long time, which is what infusion selling helps with. But how would you propose, like, what's the alternative to, okay, now we're at the end and the next step is join my program.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there has to be a transition. So at some point in the presentation, there has to be a transition. But the mistake people make is they sell at the end and that's it. And so they don't create desire and reduce resistance the whole way through their presentation. So that when the offer comes to the next step, it's, first of all, it's something that was, somewhat obvious that it was going to happen, but it's also people are in a momentum mode. They're in a mode of, rather than this, if you think about it, it's almost like rather than sitting back on their chair, they're leaning forward going, I'm fully ready to commit to this. And so because you've drawn out this desire and reduced the resistances that they've had for years, all of a sudden the offer actually genuinely feels like not just a logical next step, but an exciting next step. If they're a right fit for it.
If they're for the right people, you're Correct. Pulling and building the momentum.
Yes.
Let's speak to this offer since we're going down this path a little bit more, because you speak about something. Actually, I'm just going to say it in Colin's last podcast episode. So check it out. He goes into this much more about why your course isn't selling, right? All the way back. I'm not done with this hospital in the desert analogy. And one of the things that you shared recently was one of the reasons we may not be selling is because we may not be listening to our audience. Can you speak to that more?
Yeah, well, I know what you don't need is to be shouting in the marketplace. You need to be speaking and whispering the right words to the right ears. And an example of that on my personal life is my daughter, Georgia, who's so cute. She's like 5 years old. And I remember a moment when she was yelling at me across the playground when we were at school. And as a good dad, I was on my phone, not engaged, right? And she's yelling at me, Dad. I'm like, give me a second. I'm just doing a text message, right? Classic, like bad dad moment. And I'm like, give me a second, George, just stop. And she's, yeah, Dad. And then she runs over to me, taps me on the leg and shows me that she wants to tell me something. So I bend down and she whispers into my ear and she says, Dad, can you hold my hand? I'm really scared to go across the playground and my friends are over there. And I'm just like, my gosh, of course I can do that. What am I doing? Right? And I hold her little hand and we walk across the playground. Like she speaks to my heart. She speaks to a dad's heart, right? And what she did was she was yelling and I was resisting. And then she whispered the right words into my ears and my heart melted. And what most people are doing is they're shouting what they think their audience needs to hear. but they haven't spent any time to actually understand what their audience really needs to hear. And that's why their audience isn't listening, because they're not listening to their own audience.
Wow. Okay, that was good. That's a good story. Wait, guys, I'm telling you, Colin knows his stuff. He walks the talk. And that was a great example of you pulling through story for impact on a lesson for the audience. And there are so many of us who feel like we're shouting into a marketplace that is saturated, that is there's a zillion people doing what I'm doing. Are we getting people the right results? We're questioning what we're doing and how we're delivering. Stop shouting, start whispering into the right ears.
Yeah. And I think when you do this, because the questions you have to answer when you're speaking to your audience, the question that they're asking is, first of all, it's, do I like this person? Then it's, do I trust this person? And then it's, can this person help me with the problem I have? And if you can answer 3 of those questions through showing that you actually understand your audience, then the sale just becomes the next step. And there's no push in that. It's just, I would love to do some work with you. How do we work together?
Yeah.
And how you do that is in your presentation, you design it. There's a specific process that we use in the academy, which is called the audience psychology map. And it just maps out the trigger ideas that the audience is thinking about, so that when you whisper those to the audience, they go, wow, this person really gets me. But even more than that, I think they can help me. And as you unpack the process, and then the offer, if it's right fit for them, it's the next step.
So good. If it's the right fit for them, next step. And it's, do I like you? Do I like you? Can I trust you? And can you help me get that result? In all of that, we didn't say anything. You didn't say anything about the course. You didn't say anything about the product, because that's secondary. Would you say that's secondary to answering those 3 questions?
100%. Well, the product is just the pathway to solve the problem.
Yes.
That's all it is. And I spoke about this in the last podcast as well, in that No One Wants Your Online Course podcast.
Yes.
Was that you shouldn't obsess about your product. You have to obsess about the problem. And what that means is, I know for us, so our program, Sell From Stage Academy, if the problem in the marketplace changes to a certain degree, I will change the whole product, because I don't care about the product. I'm obsessed about the problem getting solved for the client. And a great product does this, is it works out the fastest, most efficient, and easiest way for a client to solve their problem. That's a good product. A bad product is a whole bunch of information stacking in there because you want to have a big product. Right? Yeah. And so your product isn't selling, or people's product isn't selling, because they think it's about the course. It's not about the course. It's about obsessing about the problem and whispering the right words to people.
So good. I love this. Be obsessed about the problem, not the product.
Correct.
And over again, I had conversations just today with online business. Oh, I got to fix this product. I've got to update my brand. I've got to fix my logo. I'm like, wait a second. The goal we're working toward right now is being in service, is getting solutions, is sales. And I mean, we got to have those sales coming in. We need cash flow if we're going to be able to maintain and grow this business. Which, oh my gosh, Colin, you know, I would keep you here all day. We've done that before. I've kept him over on podcast recordings and made him late to meetings, but I'm going to let you get back to it. But before we go, a couple of things. What final guidance would you have for people as we start to shift from this product obsession to the problem obsession, and we step into thinking about our sales a little bit differently? What have we missed? You're like, you don't forget this.
I think what we miss is that learning how to sell is the only doorway to service in a business. And so there really is no shame in learning how to sell effectively. And where that starts is understanding the big problems that your customers have. So if you haven't yet, spoken to your customers, interviewed your customers, done surveys. We do so many surveys with our customers, and we're always like finding out, what are they saying? In fact, we run Facebook ads just to find out trigger words that our customers are saying, so that when we say it, it just resonates with people. Because, and the reason why I do this is because I know my program is so freaking good that I have a responsibility to understand what's going on in my audience's mind, so that for the right person, when they see it, they're like, this person gets me. I want to do that.
Oh, that was good. I have a responsibility to know what is on their mind. This is a core part of our job when we are running and growing a business. Man, I'm so glad that we brought that back around and did not miss that. That got me. This is not the end. This is the beginning, because you have prepared more in-depth training for us that we can all hop in on, completely free, of course. Colin, tell us more about this training that you're hosting.
Yeah, so we're running our main training series right now, which is called How to Sell from Virtual Stages, even if you've tried and failed before. And so the focus of the training series is to do a few things. First of all, it's to show you how to start to design your webinars, your training series, so that it really moves people into your audience and doesn't just give you nice comments, it actually gives you clients. That's the first thing. The second thing is we're going to be focusing on how to choose the right signature stories, because I think people struggle with what signature story to share. So we're going to talk about signature stories. We're going to be going deeper into infusion selling and how to actually use that in your trainings and your virtual stages. And so, yeah, it's a 3-part live training series that's happening right now for a limited time. So if you are really serious about mastering this skill, which in my opinion is one of the core business skills of running a business, then come and join us inside. I don't know, Amber, you've got a direct link to that.
Yes, you can go to ambermchugh.com/Colin, 1L, COLIN, and we will hook you up. We also have some things that we're going to be doing around this. So let's stay connected as you move through this journey. I am always needing to get better at this. This is an area where I am forever a student. There are a couple of areas I'm like, oh, I know I can do better. I know I can do better. So I keep going. I keep working this program. I keep going through this experience. Obviously, I keep learning from Colin. I had ahas throughout this entire episode and was taking notes. So you definitely want to be in Colin's world if you want to generate sales without feeling slimy and without those awkward moments. Colin, there are a couple more important things that we need to touch on. The first is how incredible your Instagram reels are.
Oh, I've got to give a lot of props to my wife.
Oh yeah.
She's a dominating force with that. She's my director. She helps me with the reels.
She is amazing. So you need to head on over to Instagram.
Yeah. We made some funny ones this morning. We just made some, the everywhere you look, there's a heart, yeah, we've made one with that and it's hilarious. Like even I was laughing. And yeah, so we've done some pretty funny ones at the moment. We had one go viral the other day. My first viral one, went to 155,000 views in like 24 hours.
How fun. Okay, you got to check out what Colin's doing. I actually already messaged his wife to say these are so good. Yeah. And I think she suggested she's like, get your husband on board. Or maybe I proposed that.
Totally.
It'll go as well.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, basically my wife and I is just hanging out and reels is what we do.
Hanging out and reels. You guys are so good. Oh my goodness. I love every time I talk to Colin. Actually, I think all the podcasts we've recorded, it comes right back to Sarah.
Oh yeah, she's amazing.
She is amazing.
She's the reason I can do anything well.
Speaking of, where do we find you on Instagram so we can check out her awesome marketing and your reels?
Yeah, so it's at Colin Boyd. So ColinBoyd, Colin Boyd.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Colin, for being here, for the training you've put together, and for the knowledge that you dropped today. I'm going to get to implementing.
So good. Well, I appreciate you, Amber.
You too. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Man, that was an amazing episode with Colin. I am so glad that you spent some time with us. I just want to remind you to go over to ambermchugh.com/Colin to check out this training that he has put together so you can learn more about infusion selling. Very specifically, I would host challenges, I would host webinars, and I would get to that point of inviting people to work with me in some way, shape, or form. And boy, was it awkward. I was so much more comfortable in one on one conversations where I could really understand your specific challenge. And then I could share if I could help or not. That gets a little bit harder when we are scaling, when you are doing things online, when you're hosting webinars and you're talking to a lot of people and you want to help them identify if you can help them or not. And they've sort of got to self select on the other end of their computer, but you are there to guide them. And Colin's infusion selling experience makes that a much more seamless process. It takes the ick and the awkward out, and it helps people identify if this is the right path for them. So if you want to learn more about this, again, head on over to ambermchugh.com/Colin. This training is only up for a short amount of time. So we wanted to get this into your hands right away. I cannot wait to hear what you think about it all. Keep me posted on your journey. And we're going to have a couple of extra things for you. If you decide to continue on that journey with Colin, we're going to be there to support you as well. So watch out for those things as we move through the training with Colin together. Talk soon. I'll see you in the next episode.